Hi, my name's Jeanie. I'm from Katherine in the Northern Territory, and I'm currently working at the Northern Institute here at Charles Darwin University. I'm a senior academic research, and I'm working in a field that I've never worked in before, which is the whole climate change area, which I find really exciting. It's a huge learning curve for me. I'm working with a whole bunch of people that are all these different experts in different fields, and it's a really wonderful team environment, cohesive learning, supportive, people that are willing to share their knowledge, their information, and learn off each other. And the project that we're working on is Indigenous adaptation in Northern Australia on 4 study locations: Maningrida, Nooka in the Northern Territory, Broome in Western Australia, and Wujal in Queensland. And originally I was only going to be working on the 2 study locations in the Northern Territory, but because of the teamwork and obviously what I've contributed and what I've learned, I then have been asked to go and work with the team over in Broome and in Queensland at Wujal. So that has been a good confidence boost for me of getting to travel to other areas, some places that I haven't been before, meeting new people, meeting more countrymen, getting taken out on country by some of the elders, getting stories, learning about their journeys, about where they grew up, why they moved around on country. And also we look at basically those 4 study locations all get cut off in the wet season. Some of them are subject to cyclones. There's a lot of bushfires around there, so we work with a lot of the ranger programs. We also talk to people about what are the issues of concern on the community. So getting taken out on country by some people, you learn about who they are and where they come from and what they grew up learning. But then in that whole process too, you're going out fishing with them, they're going out taking you, showing you bush medicine or bush tucker, and then you're learning from them as well, because there's another opportunity to develop your skills and your knowledge. And we also, in that whole time, we get to hear some of their sad stories of things that have happened in their families. Or at Nooka there's a place called Mission Gorge, and I'm born and bred Territory girl, and I'd never heard about Mission Gorge, but the community had suffered severe drought, and so one of the elder men, who's now deceased, actually knew of a natural freshwater spring, and so the whole community relocated there for 2 years. But in that was a story about how people had adapted to their environment and how they are still adapting, and passing that story down now to the younger generation, and how grateful some of those people were that we actually asked about that story. So we get some sad incidences like that. We get some really funny stories, other ones of Nooka, of the elderly people growing up on the mission, and the first ever mission established in the Territory. And some of the old people out there talk about how there used to be 50 people that used to work in the market garden, and it was hard work. And they said, I remember one of the old men saying, and they were cruel to us for doing that. They said, but you know what we used to do? We used to go down, we used to pinch the watermelons, and we used to swim across that river with the watermelons. And then the next day they said they'd give us a flogging, and we'd go back again and we'd pinch that watermelon again. So there was wonderful stories that some of these people share with us when we go out on country. So that's where I'm working within the Northern Institute. But like I said, there's a whole a huge wealth of information over there of people who I've learnt off, and they've learnt off of me. And I'm really enjoying the work there at the Northern Institute. I've always wanted to go on and do further study. I did a Bachelor of Arts in Aboriginal Affairs Administration at the University of South Australia, and I've had a wonderful career working in Indigenous affairs, but I've got to the stage where I'm just burnt out, I suppose, in different fields. And 4 years ago, I threw in a really good job just to go travelling around Australia, and that was wonderful because I just targeted work in service stations, because service stations always look for workers, and when you're travelling you only want to stay there for maybe a couple of months, get your money, move on again. I got to meet more people, I didn't have any stress at my job. I just went there, did my shift, went home. Then sometimes we would just camp out, you know, by a river or something for however long, go into the next town, get some more work. And I did that for nearly a year. I then settled in Queensland because my eldest nephew at the time was starting year 8. He didn't want to go to boarding school. He didn't know anyone. He'd never been there before, so decided to settle in Townsville so that he had somewhere close by to actually come in for weekends. And that was great. Like, he enjoyed boarding school. That was 3-4 years, and then he came back to Katherine. So I decided it was time to come back home, and that gave me my break from the whole Aboriginal affairs area. I came back, I started working in Aboriginal legal aid, thought about going on to doing further studies in law, then sort of after being in the courtroom all day, every day, 5 days a week, same old sort of vicious cycle, I just thought, no, I can't do this. So I went and worked for the Yothi Indy Foundation over in Nhulunbuy for 12 months coordinating the wellbeing program. And then at the end of that contract, I decided that I needed to leave. There was other bigger projects that was going on within the foundation, and Garma each year, which is huge. And I thought it was best that I actually leave, best for the community, for the board, for the foundation, and for me. And so once I spoke with the board, and then I realised, well, I've got to find more work. And then this position, I was recommended by another Aboriginal lady, and I thought it was only going to be for 4 or 5 months, but I ended up with a 12-month contract, and that expires in April next year. But I'm not worried about that because there's going to be more opportunities, or I'm just letting it happen, and I'm going with that. But I hope that I can continue working in this area because I thoroughly enjoy it. I've been talking to people that I work with about doing further studies. I've been wanting to do that for a while, but I just couldn't put my finger on what it is exactly that I'm wanting to do. So as far as hold resource land management, caring for country, I'm actually looking at doing further studies in those fields. I don't know yet. I don't know where that will be. I'm still exploring different courses, but there's a huge I know there's a huge opportunity out there for me to tap into, and I'm going to grab it with both hands and go for it. So yeah, I come from Katherine in the Northern Territory. My parents have, my mother's Aboriginal, my father's non-Aboriginal, and my parents, we grew up doing windmills and tanks and bores and fences, and so my parents have always been working, hard workers. My mother left school at year 7 because it was that era where her mum and dad were out bush. Granddad was the head stockman and Nana was camp cook, so they moved around a lot, and Mum stayed in Katherine and was brought up by an old lady who's now deceased. So Mum had to leave school at the end of year 7, and then she went out to work, like a lot of the people of that era. My mother never did any formal training. She was CEO for 2 organisations. She is a lady that has got a huge amount of respect. My mother has since passed. We lost her last year. But I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe 11, I'm on the tractor with Mum and we're in the paddock, and she's driving the tractor and I'm sitting on the side, and she's yelling out, she was going, "I'll tell you one thing, Neen, finish your schooling, travel, go and meet people who are not like you, boys will always be around." And those 3 things stuck in my head. And so I did. I finished year 12. I was the first one in the Aboriginal and the non-Indigenous family to finish year 12. I then went back to Katherine, and I was going to stay there for a year and go down to Stone's Business College in Adelaide because I was unsure what I wanted to do. And I thought, oh, well, administration, secretarial, you know. So I didn't go back to Stone's Business College. I stayed in Katherine for 6 years. But in that time I worked, and my career, I started off as a cleaner at Kirby's in Katherine, and I ended up working for in Parliament House here in the Northern Territory, which was a wonderful opportunity. And I ended up deciding that I wanted to go to university, but I didn't know what that. I knew that I wanted to work in Indigenous affairs, but I didn't know exactly what the course was that I wanted to do. So I kept on going over to the CES and asking them to help me understand the university handbooks, and I didn't know the difference between a certificate or an associate diploma or a degree, or what is a faculty, or what's your master's, or what's a PhD. It was just all so confusing, so much that I put my studies off for a year. And I was really happy with that decision, because I knew that going and studying would be a huge commitment, not only for me but also financially, because I'm paying for this, and it does cost you money to go and study. So I ended up in that time I spoke to other Aboriginal people that had gone to the Aboriginal task force down in Adelaide, that had done their studies down there. I spoke to non-Aboriginal people in my workplaces about, what did you do when you went to study, where did you go, how long did it take. And I remember one lady saying to me, and she's a nurse, non-Indigenous lady, she said, whatever you do, don't do anything less than a Bachelor of Arts. And then I said to her, why? And she said, well, your certificate's only 12 months, and yeah, that's good, but that will get you so far. Your diploma, that's 2 years, and that will get you so far. Get your undergraduate qualification first, and then you will then be able to explore later what you want to tap into, which was really, really good advice for me. So I decided that 3 years was my commitment. In that time, I decided I didn't want any debts when I went away, so the credit card got cut up. I didn't have a great car at the time anyway, but you know, I knew I didn't need a car because I'd be going to Adelaide, and I went to boarding school in Adelaide, so I had old friends down there that I knew I could tap into to stay with, to start with, until I actually found my own accommodation. I didn't know how much money I was going to be getting, because I was going on AB study, and I'd never been on AB study. I didn't even know, and all you hear is about students being poor. But because I didn't have any bills, all I had was my rent, my food, my bus pass, my phone, and food, and I knew that that's all that I needed. So I ended up going down to Adelaide. I didn't know what my first paycheck was going to be until I got it in my account, and basically I had $50 left over each fortnight after I'd taken all my bills out. But I also decided that I didn't want to work as well. It was something that I knew I just didn't want to bring that into the equation. So that made me stick within my budget. But also what I did was, before I went away to university, I actually looked at what scholarships were available, what cadetships were available. And then I thought, well, I could apply for some of these cadetships or scholarships, but then in the holidays when I come back, I've got to work for these people, because some of it's part of your conditions, which was fine, but I wanted that freedom to be able to do what I wanted to do. And I knew that I'd be able to find work back in my hometown anyway, because I've always worked. So I decided not to tap into any of the scholarships. There was one that I got through Northern Building Consultants, and they provided $500 for you to spend on items which you would need. So I thought, I'm not going to worry about a computer because there's some at the campus. So actually that helped me pay for some of the textbooks that I needed, and plus there was accountability there, so I knew that I could provide those receipts, and that would be of use to my university. I also decided that when I came home in the holidays I was going to work. So once I started my course, I worked out, you know, you got your calendar, you know when you start your degree, you know when your assignments are due, you know. I knew that I didn't want to hand them in late, and I knew that I wanted to come home mid-semester break. So I actually worked out my calendar, and when I got my assignments I would just start them, even if I didn't know what the topic was about. I would start them by either going and talking to some of the other co-students of, you know, this, what do they mean by this, or going and talking to some of the lecturers, or I would go and talk to some of the students that were the year above me and say, you know, what were some of the ideas that you guys did with. So I'd bounce around ideas. I'd then start Googling stuff and just reading about it, and and I'd just do a little bit each day, you know, and then move on to another subject. Or but that was useful because I didn't leave everything right to the last minute, and I wasn't stressed because I had to finish, you know, all these things at the last minute. I just little bit by little bit by little bit. And sometimes too I was thinking, oh, I'm off on the wrong path or whatever, I didn't even know. But what I did was I utilised my tutorials. Like I didn't want it to be of, oh good, I can go home at 2 o'clock on Tuesday because there's a tutorial on at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. I would go to the tutorial, and then that's when it would help me develop my understanding, or you'd hear different viewpoints from the other students about how they seen a question or how they seen a project, or I learnt sometimes just being involved in that discussion. When I was away at uni, I mean, everybody's, you know, your hometown, you keep your network strong, but I had a lot of people back home that would either be curious about how you're going, or, you know, curious as to how your studies are or how you are. So when I went back on my university holidays, I'd go and see them. You know, just go and have a cup of coffee with a couple of the ladies, or go around and see, you know, somebody that you've actually talked to about studying, and talk to them about your experience, and, you know, you compare sort of fun times at uni, or, you know, but also too, by keeping that network strong at home, I would actually write to people before I came back and say, hey, look, I'm home for the uni break, can I get some work, you know, as an opportunity for 3-4 weeks or something. And that allowed me then to come back home and get money, because I knew that I'd need clothes for winter. So then that was a way that I was able to look after myself. And when I went to uni, they had these HEX-free loans, which they say they're HEX-free loans, but basically they're just a loan that you defer until you actually start working again. And a lot of the students that I went to school with applied for them, so you got double your income. Which, yeah, they had more money, but you still had to pay it off at the end. And I decided I wasn't going to do that because it was costly enough to do my degree. And so I didn't tap into that dollars. And I remember my mother saying to me, the more you earn, the more you spend. And that stuck in my mind as well, as to, no, I'm coping with what I've got, and yeah, it's not, I don't have a lot left over, but I've got what I need to get to do what I want to do in the time frame that I was going to do it in. I had my heart set that I wasn't going to fail a subject. I tapped into some of the older students that were a year above me or a couple of years above me for any tutorial support, because that was a way of them earning a bit of cash on the side and providing some tutorial works for the students. So I tapped into that. There was that support base there. I tapped into my lecturers, and the other thing that the students and I did was we set up our own little study group. So what we would do was maybe once a week we'd go down to the botanical gardens when it was especially sunny. We'd go down the botanical gardens, but we always made it like a fun activity. So we had a purpose for why we were going down there to discuss this project that we were all had to submit by whatever date. But what we'd do is go down and we'd all take something with us. So maybe just bring a block of chocolate, you know, not a huge block, just a block of chocolate, or bring a coffee, or bring a game of Yahtzee, and we'd sometimes sit down there. So we'd do our study group, talk amongst ourselves, and then we'd do something fun afterwards. So we made our study groups fun, and then when it was winter we'd sometimes meet at a different person's place, and you can take over a plate of food and you can share. And so we made university fun. The other thing was, whilst I was going to uni of South Australia, when I first got there, I spoke to the student support officer to find out everything that I needed to know as much as I could: orientation, what support's available, where can I get furniture from, where are cheap places are there other students looking for accommodation, And in my orientation I was also told that there was an exchange student, an international exchange between University of South Australia and Northern Arizona University, and it was for, you had to get credits and above, and it was for the last half of your final year degree. And you went over to Northern Arizona University and somebody came over as an exchange. And so once I heard about that, I just thought, well, my ears pricked up, and I thought, well, I'm going to work hard because that's my goal at the end. And the other way I looked at it was, yeah, it might be daunting going all the way overseas all by yourself, and new campus and new university and new learning, but it's exciting. But also too, I thought I'm going to use that as a reward to me for actually working my butt off. So, and the other thing that I had to do was I had to come up with my own health insurance, basically, or my own insurance to go over. That was the only cost to me as a student. So what I did was I tapped into my networks back home, and this gentleman by the name of Mike Jackson, who had Jackson Travel, I approached Jacko and said to him, look, this is what I'm planning to do. Can you actually give me some type of travel insurance? And he gave me a discounted rate, which was again support from back home. And so that was my costs met, like it was good. And I was over there for 4 months. That was another world. The campus was that big that they had buses that used to just drive around all day, and they'd pick students up from North Campus, because you might have 10 minutes to get to your next lesson. You couldn't walk from North Campus to South Campus in that time. They had their own police on the campus. There was all different types of accommodation, where one level was 25-year-olds and below, 25-year-olds and above, or then they actually had some accommodation for families. So it might actually only be one person studying, but the whole family lived on campus with them. They had their university bookstore, where you actually didn't buy the books brand new. You bought them, they were second hand. But then you sold them back to the university when you finished. So it just opened my eyes up too as to what Australian universities may be like one day, I don't know. Where we were, it was 14,000 feet above sea level, so it was going to snow, and coming from the territory I don't have any winter clothing, so my roommate said to me, no, when it does get colder, so they took us to this closed place on the campus, and you actually just bought your winter stuff that you needed, but then you sold it back to them at the end of the semester. But that was a wonderful opportunity, something that just opened my eyes up even more, learning a little bit about the Native American Indian people. And I thought our mob was shy, but them fellas are really, really shy. But it was another wonderful opportunity. Australians are just so loved overseas, so I had that many people that would be wanting to take you places on weekends, or go here or go there, which was great, but I also had to make sure that I kept focused on my studies. And also because if I failed one subject over there, I would have to come back to Australia and do another half year, and I thought, I'm not even going to do that. So when I went over there, you could pick whatever subjects you wanted, and their subjects are coded. 100 to 500 is undergraduate studies, 500 plus is postgraduate studies, and their book was just thick as. And there's all these subjects, like, I was just blown away. I'm like, wow, I can do any of these, which was exciting. But then I thought, hang on, I better stick with what I'm familiar with. So I did Peoples of the Southwest, Peoples of the World, Symbol, Myth and Ritual, and women's gender type of subject. But I was very sporty back then, so I was looking at all these different sports subjects. But what you had to do too was get a lecturer to agree and approve of the subjects that you'd selected. So I thought, no, I better stick with, I'm doing Indigenous affairs, I sort of better stay familiar with that. And I just did a sports subject as an elective, so I didn't have to pass that. But anyway, that was wonderful. Did my 4 months over in America, and then came back to Australia, and then 6 months later graduated down at Uni of South Australia, which was wonderful. But what else am I talking about? After university, I then went back into the workforce again, and even though I had started off in the government, well, I started off cleaning, got in the government, and then had got to a certain level and realised that if I want to go any higher, I'm going to need qualifications. And so once I went back, there was then even more opportunities for me about where I could go and work or which field did I want to specialise in. So I thoroughly enjoyed those 3 years studying, probably some of the best times of my life, and it's been wonderful now to you see some of the co-students that you worked with maybe pop up on the screen because they're CEO of this organisation or they're an advisor to, and just to see people's different career paths and where they got to. And then at the same time too, I've seen some people that actually haven't finished that study, but they've worked really, really hard and they've still done very well for themselves. There's huge opportunities there for, I think there's one thing for when people are going to study is there's so many different support programs out there for people to build their confidence to learn. It is daunting, but I would tap into those programs if I could, and explore. You know, there's so many roads out there that people can travel, and I've even, you know, there's only one person that sticks in my mind that didn't finish the course, didn't finish a degree, and it was mainly just because they couldn't afford that. They had a family, so they couldn't actually afford to stay whilst he continued studying. So I think with the families as well, it's just something that people need to work out strategies as a family of how, if it's a goal, and I look at it this way, if I'm going to die when I'm 70 and it's 3 years out of my life, well, that's not a long time. So it can be hard. I went into state because the course that I was doing wasn't available up here in Darwin at that time. So that was also making lots of decisions about being away from family and being away from your friends and being away from your comfort zone. But I also knew that if I actually stayed home, that because I know my own willpower, I could be easily influenced with going for the barbecue, or, you know, sad things like funerals happen and it's just part of life, and you don't feel good sometimes because you're not at home, you're away, and, you know, people may be asking for you, but I call it a tough love, and there's sometimes you've got to make those hard decisions, and family will be there for you to help you ride those bad times, and they'll be there to help you ride those good times as well. But sometimes that's just a hard call that you've got to make. Some of the things that I also, you know, keeping in contact with people back home, or there was one lady that was overseas studying, and I used to actually send her the weekly paper back from my hometown, and number one, it was just so that in case she got homesick, or, you know, she got news about home each week, but it was also important because if some of the elders passed away, that she actually knew who had passed on, and that was important for when she came back home, because she wasn't showing disrespect by not asking about people who had passed on. But I found that there's a lot of support from my hometown, from Aboriginal people, from non-Aboriginal people. They want to support you in your journey. You're always going to have the knockers, and they're everywhere. It doesn't matter how old you are or what you're doing, you're always going to have the knockers. But one thing I try and do is I stay away from negative people. So it might be you know, people that you think are your friends, or it could be a family member that's maybe thinking that you're telling you that you think you're too good for them or whatever. I just basically I stay away from that negativity because it's unhealthy, and I also do that in my workplace as well. That if there's just negative, whether I don't experience that where I'm working, But if I'm in a workplace and there's just too much negativity or too much knocking, I just think, you know what, this is not good for my health and I've got to move on. So I try and stay positive. I hope that there's people that I inspire to think, all right, well, I can do what I want, or I can do that, or wow, you know, I've worked in lots of different fields and it's been wonderful learning again. But also too, I've always done a job, number one, because I think there's something that I can learn from that position. I also like to think that there's something I can contribute to that position, and the salary just happens to be the bonus. So I've never done a job for money, and I've got to want to get up in the morning and get out of bed and go to work, and the moment I lose that feeling, I know that I've got to move on. But everyone, each to their own. That's me and how I am with my career. I take my hat off to those people that, you know, find a field and they just stay working in it for years and years and years. Like I think that's wonderful, but I know that's not me. So you just need to keep finding what it is that interests you, or, you know, upskill yourself in another area, or go out on a limb and have a go at something that you've never done before. It was daunting for me to start with all this climate change information, and I'm like, oh my God, what's all this? What's this language? What's this? But I've developed my confidence just by doing what I'm doing and actually working with a great team that I work with, and, you know, learning off of each other. And I go away a lot for work, which it's really wonderful, but sometimes you just want to go, I just want to stop, you know, because even when I come back home, I might be only home for 5 days, but I'm over here, I'm over there, on the weekends it's just like, right, I'm staying home, not going anywhere, I'm just going to stay home. So it's been great, but I know that I'm on another journey now. I don't know what that journey is, and I'm just going to go with the flow and see what rolls out in front of me. I'm going to grab any opportunity with both hands, and again, put in 100%, do my best, and actually have fun on the way. And that's the great thing about learning. It can be daunting not knowing what it is that you're going to be working in, or working in a new field, but I try and create as much fun as what I possibly can. I try and look on the positive sides of it, and even though there might be a couple of negatives, you might sit back, but I'll just sit there and I'll think of the positives. Again, what else? I don't know. I'd just encourage kids at school, or people in the workforce. I think that you need to find what it is that you're after, and, you know, I don't think that anything is better than anything else. So it doesn't matter if you've gone to university and you've done this, or you're a professor or whatever. My mother and father haven't got any qualifications, and they've worked with their hands and their brains. And I've seen both sides, how you can really make something of yourself, whether you've got those qualifications or not. But I think that, you know, each one of us are different with our learning, so you need to find what it is that you're looking for. So if it is an apprenticeship, if you want to go on and become a diesel fitter, or become a plumber, or whatever, you know within yourself what it is that you're comfortable with. If you're a person that is looking at university, don't know what it is, but it's exciting for you, go and explore that, you know. I'm glad that I didn't go straight to university when I left school. I'm glad that I actually went to the workforce and worked for about 8 years, because that then gave me an opportunity to look at different areas that people are working in, look at the different specialties within health and community services, which is where I was working then, and all the different specialisations in that portfolio. And then that's when I sort of thought, right, it is Indigenous affairs that I want to work in, but I don't know what the course is. I don't know there were some people doing a Bachelor of Arts and Applied Science through Curtin University, and they were doing block training. And I was saying to them, what's Bachelor of Arts and Applied Science? Like I didn't know what that was. But I just kept on asking questions, or I, kept on keeping an eye on the paper about what courses were available, and until I actually found that Bachelor of Arts in Aboriginal Affairs Administration, and I'm going, yes, this is it, this is what I want. I'm glad I've done it, but now it's time for me to actually develop my skills in a mainstream area, which is what I want to do. A mainstream area in that if I choose to work for a non-Indigenous organisation, I have that skill. If I choose to work in an Indigenous organisation, I've got that mainstream skill that I can actually bring into the Indigenous organisation. And if I'm working for a non-Indigenous organisation, well, I can bring that Indigenous knowledge network that I have and incorporate that into my new position. So that's my challenge for me at the moment. Yes, I've got my Bachelor of Arts in Aboriginal Affairs Administration, but my learning hasn't finished, and I'm going to keep asking questions and keep talking to people and keep having a look at university websites and seeing what's available. And my type of learning is I kind of want to be there in the classroom with the people. I'm not a good distance learner. That's not it's just something I don't like. So, well, I know I'm not good at it. So I'd rather be in the classroom. That face-to-face contact for me is really important. But I will find what my study is going to be, and hopefully one day I will have some professor name, or I don't know. But also too, in saying that, with my studies, I'm the type of person that I don't have my degree framed. I don't have it, it's sitting in an A4 sleeve in my top drawer at home, and that's just me. What means something to me is going back home and having acknowledgement from the old people that are there, or getting the respect from it's the people on the ground that mean that to me. And not only did I do my study for me, but I also did it for my people as well, for the cause. So I'm hoping to keep contributing to the cause. I'm hoping to expand my learning even more, develop my skills, and I've still got a lot of years left in me, so who knows what the end of my story will be.